All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Puget Systems podcast. I'm your host, Houston, as usual, and I'm joined today for our server and our storage and server solutions discussion with our, I think your official title is Business Development Manager, Chris Stevenson. He's our storage and server expert guy. Actually, I like. That's a little too small. It's a little too small for two people. Usually I had a couple other people. This is better. But I always like to do when I have new guests or guests that haven't come along in a little while, go ahead and kind of introduce yourself. Give us a little idea of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Chris Stevenson. I am as Houston said, the business development manager for the enterprise here at Puget Systems. My goal or my mission is to bring more enterprise products to the Puget portfolio and out to our customers. I've been doing that in the industry for about 20 years now.
Oh, cool. That's neat. So we had a bit of a talk before some prep work to get into this. And so I'm really excited to kind of touch on some of the topics that we spoke about before this. And because I really think this is a cool angle, a cool direction that we're heading as we expand into the storage and server solution stuff. And especially that part there about solutions. Right. Up until this point, and really going forward, we've focused a lot on the hardware. It's still a bit of a solution. A creator or an engineer or something has a problem. Their machine is slow or it's not working the way they think it should. And in response to that, our solution has been to get them the appropriate hardware for that. But this is a little bit of a different take on that solution orientation. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So, as technology has evolved over the last, 10, 20 years, we're getting to a point where the advancements in the capabilities and the technology that we use day to day is getting so complex that it's becoming harder and harder just to buy the hardware and, I'll figure it out. I'll tinker, and I'll get it working. The advent of AI has been huge. And the advancements that we're seeing there, and it's moving so fast that we're seeing a lot of customers that they're coming up with problems, and they may not necessarily have the expertise or the knowledge of how to solve it complete end to end. They know that they might need a piece of hardware, but they're not exactly sure what they need or how that they can accomplish their end goal with that piece of hardware. So we're seeing that big shift from just selling just hardware and maybe the operating system on top of that to being able to solve a problem for a customer and offer a complete solution from the consultation side of it, the software and the installation side of it, licensing, and then all the other hardware tie-ins that kind of go with it. So that's the shift that we're starting to see just as things get more and more complex. Without getting in too much into specifics, can you share a bit of an example of something that we've been able to solve in that way recently? Yeah, so I'd say one of the big ones. So obviously, Puget Systems is known for our workstations, but one of the shifts that we're seeing, especially since the pandemic, is that model or that move to the hybrid work from home type model, and that has created new opportunities for employees to be more comfortable and be at home, like I am now. But it's also more complex for IT managers and how to manage that, right? From a security standpoint, from an access standpoint. So we're seeing a lot more people that are shifting to technologies like VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure, where they want the performance of a workstation, but they want to have some level of control or some level of that equipment still being and residing within the company. For example, if you're a video game developer, it's very hard to keep leaks under wraps these days. You're seeing a lot of these video game developers that are having their source code leaked or trailers leaked early, and so being able to control that data and that information without hindering your employees' workflow, that's a big thing that we're seeing now. So VDI has been one thing that we're expanding into, where we can virtualize the desktop, put it in a data center, and provide that same level of performance without having to have a workstation sitting somewhere in an empty office. So we're seeing a lot more of those customers that are ditching the full office and going full remote, but they still need infrastructure. They still need those systems to be somewhere in a data center. Sure.
So that's a big example of the shift that we've seen over the last few years, away from that physical in-office presence to something more virtual. Workloads such as, like I said, video game development or anything with engineering or video production, you need high resolution graphics. You need all those components of the desktop. So that's been an interesting challenge of how to solve that and do it all remote.
Sure. And so how does the virtual desktop infrastructure, or the VDI things, how is that different than, say, using something like Parsec or TeamViewer to remote into a workstation that's somewhere else?
Yeah, we'll try to keep it high level because that's a conversation that can go very, very deep, very, very quickly.
Sure.
But at a high level, technologies like Parsec or HP Anywhere, they're going to be like a one-to-one for the most part, or at least in that level of implementation where you're connecting to a physical remote machine somewhere, and it's providing the transport layer to ensure you have low latency and full motion graphics and things out. When you get into VDI, it extrapolates that to another level where we can actually enable servers in the data center with multiple high-end GPUs, and then actually carve those GPUs up in chunks to assign out to virtual desktops. So one of the benefits of doing that is you can actually end up utilizing more of your hardware. You're getting more for your money when you get down that realm. And then you also have the ability to maximize on your security. In a situation like VDI, you can ensure that a user can't copy and paste out of their virtual environment. They can't plug in a USB stick and copy the new Call of Duty source code out onto their USB stick and post it online. So it enables a lot of control over that environment without and keeping it all centralized is the big thing. So you can actually add and remove users as people move in and out of your organization. You can add and remove resources for users as their workflows and their needs change. So that's a big benefit that a lot of customers have seen in that area.
Right on. And I imagine that, I guess, hold on, let me see how I phrase this a little better. What are some of the advantages? I guess you kind of touched on some of the advantages of that, but I suppose the initial cost is going to be pretty high. Does it parse out better that way than say a dozen individual machines? Because
it's hard to say because each deployment is going to be unique. The challenges that each company is going to face are going to be different.
Sure.
But especially I would say that the investment there as a return is, let's say it's a customer who has decided to go completely out of the office and work from home. You still would have to manage a fleet of workstations sitting somewhere if you're managing some level of that security, right? So if you're using the remote software such as Parsec, those systems still have to sit somewhere. Somebody still has to manage them, and they have a cost, an operational cost to sit inside of an empty office. There's tons of opportunities with co-location or even cloud where you can move to something that sits in a data center, and the footprint operational costs are probably going to be a lot lower. So I think over time you can see a big return on your investment if you're moving your organization that direction for a product like that.
Okay, right on. Earlier you mentioned about security. I suppose how are we able to help with that?
Security is obviously a huge concern these days. Ransomware attacks are getting huge. I know there
Sony
was
and the Insomniac thing, where I think they lost a bunch, like 4 or 5 games worth of like source code and things like that.
Yeah. And there's actually it's a little bit more of a local scenario, but there was a casino here in the state that got hit with ransomware, and they didn't find out for a couple days. And the word on the street is that the payout numbers were aligned and more in the favor of the people gambling than the house. And that actually took when they figured that out, that actually took them offline for I think like 2 weeks while they figured out how to deal with that. So security and cybersecurity is a big concern right now. I'd probably touch on our new software defined storage products. That's another area we hadn't really talked about. Storage is huge. Fast storage, deep storage, long-term storage is a big concern. And so we're approaching that with software-defined storage that meets certain security standards like HIPAA or NIST compliance, as well as things like immutable storage. Basically, once your data is written, it cannot be changed. So by providing situations like that, it gives you fast resolution from a ransomware attack where somebody's holding your data hostage. You can recover from that much quicker by building out some of those storage options ahead of time, to hope that you never have to use them. But in the event that you do, it could save you a lot of money to do that. So data security is a big thing we're seeing right now. VDI, again, is one of those where if your data is in a secure location and there's secure access to it, the chances are you're going to do a lot better keeping that data safe than if your data is just kind of out there sitting on different workstations, sitting on different USB sticks. It just gives you that added level of security and data control.
Right on. As we keep going towards this sort of remote access, so how does this differ from, say, something? This is a little beyond my knowledge base, so this may seem a little silly, but how is this different from, say, like a cloud solution?
It's going to be very similar.
Okay.
We're seeing kind of a movement of technologies and ecosystems to things like containers, such as Docker, where you can package your application up and run it in the cloud, or you can run it on-prem, or you can kind of move that around. So there's a big push right now for that hybrid scenario between full cloud and on-prem. And a lot of the technologies that we're working on rolling out support that hybrid environment. Now, cloud is definitely has its advantages, but it also can be very expensive. We have seen a lot of users that have started in the cloud, have grown, and they get to a point where the cloud becomes cost prohibitive. And so we're seeing a lot of repatriation where they're coming from the cloud back on-prem, but they've already designed their infrastructure around cloud architectures. So we are working with technologies that allow you to have your own cloud, your private cloud on premise. And so you can move and manipulate your data in between the public cloud and your private cloud, or expand. Let's say the game developers is such a fun way to look at this. Let's say you've developed a new game and you launch your servers out there, and your game becomes way more popular than you ever thought possible, and you quickly eclipse the abilities of your in-house server farm. Well, with hybrid cloud, you can easily expand and bring up more servers and more infrastructure up into the cloud to extend your capabilities temporarily while you figure out what you want to do and move that thing forward. So the flexibility is what's really key in those technologies. It allows you to go from the cloud to on-prem, back and forth pretty easily. Our software-defined storage also has tie-ins for cold storage. A lot of our customers are doing like video production or anything with media creation. And there may be content that you may not need readily accessible to your users right now, but you don't want to get rid of it. But you don't want to pay a large number to store it either. So we have technologies that allow us to basically say, okay, data that's over a year old, for an example, we can move up to really affordable cold cloud storage. So we can move that data off of our warm, hot data storage appliances out into the cloud in case we need it. A good example for that is like, let's say you're doing documentaries and you want to be able to have access to footage that may be a documentary from 15 years ago, and some of that footage becomes more relevant again, and you want to be able to have access to that data, but you may not necessarily need it right here, right now, online all the time.
Sure. Okay.
So lots of different avenues to go down.
Nice. Yeah. A couple times you mentioned about GPUs, the VDI thing, being able to split those up and things like that. I've also noticed that we have seen a bit of a shift from LLMs and whatnot, using cloud-based services in that way, to people kind of wanting to host their own. How do I say this? I guess what are some of the considerations a company should have when they plan? Where do they start with thinking about that? Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. It looks like we had a little hiccup there. That's a really hard one. We're seeing a huge explosive demand for AI in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing AI vision, the large language model type stuff. We're seeing a lot of that. So we're also working on products to support those workloads and those models. That when it comes to cloud for anything AI related, anything GPU enabled in the cloud can be extremely expensive.
Sure.
It's great for prototyping and startup type use. But unless you have deep pockets, the cloud can be very, very expensive to operate GPUs within. So we're also expanding our portfolio to support a lot of different of those products for that AI adoption. We're working on a few different products, but obviously the new NVIDIA H100 is kind of the hot product that's available right now. That's getting into the bigger, heavier models, but we also support products everywhere, or down to the L40S and anything in between to support those different workloads. We're also seeing a lot more AI being done on the edge, so in between the end user and the data center. So we're looking at products that allow us to do some AI computation on the edge of your network versus going all the way to your data center to do that computation. And a lot of that's still emerging, and we're seeing that a lot more. AI vision is going to be, I think, a huge thing. I saw a company recently that's using AI vision for sports stadiums. And what they're able to do is with real-time cameras and AI vision, they can determine where the crowds are moving through a stadium, which concession stand is going to have a longer wait time than another. And that's all data that they could provide in real time out to the people at the stadium to be like, hey, section A, the concession stand is 10 minutes during intermission, but the one over in section R has no line and it's a 2-minute walk. So I might as well walk over to that concession stand and get my concession. So there's a lot of new technologies that we're seeing coming out, and we're excited to continue to work with some partners on how we can bring more products to market to enable AI that you can actually use on-prem yourself, versus just going to the big models like the Chat GPTs and the Copilots out there. So you can kind of bring that more in house and find ways to utilize it.
Oh, cool! Right on. We're not the first to kind of jump into this sort of industry, these sorts of use cases. What's going to separate us? What's going to set us apart from Supermicro or Gigabyte or some of these other guys who have already a fairly entrenched place in storage and servers?
Yeah, I'd say it's just the Puget model. If you look at what we do on the workstation front right now, our Puget Labs department, our production of benchmarks, and all that knowledge that we put out into the community there. We're looking forward to growing that into more of the enterprise space. We want servers and enterprise to be easy to own as well, just like our workstation products. Sure. So you're going to get that same level of interaction and support on our enterprise offerings that you currently get from our workstation product lines, and expect that to continue as we grow into those product segments. Our goal here is to make it easy, to make it hopefully maybe a little fun, and give you an opportunity to solve your problem without banging your head against a wall. We want to be here and give you our expertise and our knowledge so that you can deploy your project and move on with everything else you've got to work on it day to day and make it easy.
Right. Nice. I'm kind of interested to see I'm really excited to see how this grows and changes. It feels it's very different from the workstation side of things, from start to finish, really, because even like the build out part, the production. I come from an assembly background, and you kind of see the window there. that's going to be a bit of a challenge, I think, right? Like how was again, without maybe getting too much into the details of what's going on, in closed doors here, how are we going to handle that shift?
That's part of my mission here, is to figure out how we're going to do that.
Okay.
One thing I can say with my time at Puget so far, though, is that the in-house technology that we have, the flexibility that we have, and just the collective knowledge of everyone in the building is what I think is really going to enable us to move forward on that. The enterprise is very complex, but so is a lot of the products and workflows that we've been dealing with for many, many years. There's a lot of caveats and a lot of things to think about there. So I fully expect that as we move down into those new product segments, we're going to see that same level of growth from the team and knowledge to get where we want to be able to provide to our customers.
I wonder too about the support side of it. With because it seems like so I guess let me give a sec to kind of rephrase a little. We have sort of these buckets when it comes to the workstations. As content creation, engineering, scientific computing, I say that one a lot. And even within those, there's fairly defined sort of templates, let's say, for these different workflows and things. It seems like the growing into storage and server solutions and things is going to be very unique to each individual client. I guess we're going to have to be a lot more hands-on, especially on the support side of things, right? Like, does that mean kind of going out there and helping them? I suppose the vision, again, no promises or anything, just kind of just thinking about this. How hands-on are we going to be? Or do you picture it becoming?
Yeah, and that's an area we're working on building out for sure. Our goal is to continue to provide that extra expert level of support,
Sure.
and that is going to come with some capabilities and some abilities to offer some professional services and on-site services and deployment services to help enable that. We don't want our customers to feel like once the equipment's bought, that's it. That's where
Sure.
Puget's relationship ends, other than if they run into a problem. Our goal is that end-to-end solution. So we're going to help you from the consultative side to the deployment side of it, and all the way through. So you will see more programs and practices put forth for our support and services side of the house, and we're working on growing that pretty rapidly. We're developing new competencies and new specialists to support that side of the business. But yeah, you'll continue to see that evolve and grow, but it will definitely stay within the Puget way of doing things. As we get into that, you're going to get the same level of support, the same level of friendly, helpful people on the phone when you call in for the products, and not just be farmed out, to some call center somewhere. That's not the model we're looking to do. So stay tuned for more of how we're going to develop that. But I think as we get farther down the road, there's going to be more and more available products and services on the support and deployment side as well.
That's cool. As the social media coordinator here at Puget Systems, it always comes. It's my job to kind of get this sort of thing out in front of people, and it's fairly easy to kind of point at the hardware and say, "Hey, this is faster. You can get your work done better." How do we, if it's going to be a full solution sort of thing, what do we point? We can't do labs testing of every unique deployment, I think is the right term. So how do I or the rest of how are we going to I guess get the message out? How do we show that we know what we're doing, that we know what we're talking about, and can actually solve these problems?
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of that come out of our labs group as time goes on. Now it may not be in the similar form of just raw benchmarks that you've seen in the past, but a lot of informative information is, I want to get into VDI. How do I do that? What should I know? What challenges might I face? You know, what workflows work well in VDI, what workflows may not work so well in VDI. That's the type of information you're going to be seeing out there. Is giving the user some level of basic understanding to say, okay, I need to start down this path. I know that this is the path I need to go down, but I don't know where to start. Like, it's making my head spin trying to research VMware versus Citrix versus whoever, you know, for these technologies. And so that's where you're going to see a lot more from our labs team, and as well from our consulting side, on being able to help answer those questions and kind of start setting you on a path to solve your problem, right? So a lot of that, labs is going to be a huge part of that. I think as we move forward is getting that information out there. One of my favorite phrases that everyone laughs at me in house is that, you know, every system or every deployment is a snowflake.
Right.
Everyone's unique. Its challenges are going to be unique. But that's what we're here to help solve, is those unique challenges as they come up. We're investing heavily in those areas to ensure that that's the value we can provide, is that unique strategy around complex and unique deployments.
Nice. You touched on you had mentioned VMware, and that popped a previous question into my head. How is virtual machines and VMware, that sort of thing, how is it different from VDI?
Well, yeah. So VMware is just one of the brand names behind VDI products. So there's that provide VDI infrastructure or virtual desktop infrastructure. And VMware is just one of the key players in there. They produce their VMware Horizon product that is VDI infrastructure.
Okay, I see. Because that was something that it was like, how is VDI any different from like a virtual machine? And it kind of isn't, right? They're pretty much the same kind of a thing.
They're cut from the same cloth, definitely. Yeah.
Okay,
just different use cases.
I see. Yeah, because like it seems like I guess when you talk virtual machines, it's more, I guess, local, right? Like I could spin up a little sandbox on my computer sitting there, versus the VDI part's more remote, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, virtualization typically sits within the data center. You know, there's virtualization on like you were saying, like on the desktop level for sandboxing and things like that. I know we do some internal development on VD or VM sandboxes. But you're going to see virtualization not only for the virtual desktop side, but in the traditional data center sense of just general enterprise operations. Like Puget internally has a big virtualization deployment. And most organizations, typically when they're deploying server hardware, you're either going to see virtualization or containerization on most deployments out there.
Right, that's cool. Man, I was kind of thinking we'd have a little more from the audience on this. I'm running a little low on my questions that I had kind of wrote down. But and I don't want to. I hate to repeat myself or cover things we've already done. But I suppose, what advice could you give to companies looking to upgrade their IT infrastructure?
Yeah,
if they're looking to start down this path.
That's a really hard road to go down sometimes. You know, right now we're dealing with economic strains, political strains within the world, and that's impacting, global supply of products. There's a lot of mergers happening, a lot of new technologies coming out. So it can be definitely a minefield to navigate. But I would say anyone that's knows they need to make a change, but they don't know necessarily how to approach it yet, should just reach out and talk to myself or one of the other consultants, and start talking about it and understanding, hey, we feel like we need to make a move here. We feel like we're not where we should be when it comes to our infrastructure or our internal systems. Do you have any advice for us? Like what can we do to change that? Our portfolio is very broad. We have everything product wise from HPC to GPU enabled to storage. We have everything under the sun there to offer. and it's all there just waiting for your problems. So bring that to us, and we could probably help advise you and guide you on what infrastructure changes you may need to make. And a lot of times, I'll have calls with customers, and we'll start down a certain path, and I'll leave them with homework. They need to go back and say, okay, here's your homework for tonight, to go back and answer all these questions about your infrastructure and your needs. And then let's come back and let's talk about it more in depth, and see where we need to get to find that right product for you.
Right on. I'm curious about scale as well. I feel like this isn't something that a solo or two people sort of teams, these sort of solutions wouldn't make sense at a very, very small scale. But like, at what point would it start to make sense? And I suppose it's a little vague, because like it's probably going to depend on what you're trying to accomplish and such. But I guess in a general sense, what does the kind of customer look like, or the scale in terms of team or company size look like?
Yeah, it really depends. The key advice I would give is to do the research and build the groundwork foundation. Every company should always look at the fact that they want to start here, and they want to grow, and they want to expand.
Sure.
And starting with that mindset from the beginning with your infrastructure can be a huge advantage when you get farther down the path. For a company starting out now, I'd say make sure you're doing virtualization or containerization on your applications.
Mm-hmm.
Same with your storage. We offer storage solutions that are going to scale from about 100 terabytes up into the petabyte range. And we can scale that technology from the very beginning with our scale up or scale out architecture to fit whatever needs you might have. And the same thing with virtualization, right? Come up with a plan and invest in a good foundation, and that foundation should scale with you as you learn and grow. So you really can start anywhere and grow into a lot of the products that are on the market today.
Cool. You had said a phrase there that just was kind of interesting. Scale up or scale out. What is that?
So we offer two different methodologies when it comes to our software-defined storage, is kind of what I was referring to there. Scale up is basically the ability to scale your storage in overall capacity.
Like bigger drives, more drives.
Yeah, it's scaling that one deployment vertically, where you're just adding more storage underneath it. A scale out deployment is where you're not only scaling the amount of data storage capacity you have, but also the performance and the connectivity for it. So a scale out deployment, it would be, instead of just adding hard drives into a deployment, you're adding full systems with storage. So you're scaling on the system level, which gives you more CPU performance for your storage and more networking performance, as well as overall disk capacity and disk performance. That's a perfect example of the type of conversation we'll have with a customer to understand what their needs are and determine, are you a candidate for scale up storage or a candidate for scale out storage? And then we'll kind of work down that path based on what their growth plans look like.
Nice. You mentioned a few of the crazy high-end graphics cards that we're now starting to carry and are able to. Has it been difficult to kind of get into that? Because it's a whole different ballgame getting into that level of hardware. What have been some of the challenges internally to do that?
A lot of it's just figuring out workloads. Again, the workloads are so varied from user to user. And also that the mixture we have between some of our more traditional customers, like video production and virtual production, up into the AI and ML space. There's some crossover that we're seeing there on some of those products for those use cases. But I'd say just understanding, what the use case looks like. Companies like NVIDIA right now are just, going full tilt when it comes to these GPU enabled products for AI.
Sure.
There's a lot of different ways to approach that. So we're offering, like I said, we're offering the new H100 and H100 NVLs in our solutions now, and HGX style deployments. But, again, we offer everything down to the traditional enterprise GPUs, like the 4,000 ADA, 5,000, 6,000 ADA, that can be used for some of those workflows. And then you start kind of stepping up into the L40 and the L40S. The big differences there are just going to be, the overall performance and the memory scalability for working some of those big models.
Sure.
And so it's all just about scale. But again, the beauty of the portfolio is that we can scale from the beginning point or those like edge style deployments all the way up into that full on enterprise data center style deployment.
This might be getting a little too like secret sauce. Traditionally, we have worked with consumer, professional, but it's still consumer level, stuff you can kind of just get off the shelf in a sense. The average, I can't just go on eBay or Amazon and buy an H100. I don't think.
No.
And so, since our reputation as a company has been more on that sort of off the shelf product, has there been any challenge in developing the pathways to get these more crazy hardware?
No, we're very fortunate that our reputation in the industry is what it is. Cool. And we've been able to leverage that to expand and work with our partners and grow our partner network into these new areas without too much trouble. So there's only so many players in the world when it comes to some of this kit. So
sure.
Luckily, we've got longstanding relationships with most of them. That's enabled us to grow very rapidly into that space.
Right on. I feel like we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but this is kind of a brand new angle for us. And I feel like we've kind of touched on this a little tangentially or on the sides, but like, I guess this should have been a much earlier question, but what's really kind of inspired us to kind of get into this space?
I'd say it's our customers. One of the key factors for us is listening to the demands of our customers and understanding their challenges and pain points. And that's been a huge driving force for that is our customers are learning and growing and starting to take on these more complex challenges. So their demands of us have started to grow.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking for the more complex systems, the more storage, the faster networking, because they're growing and evolving their technologies. A good example is like the video production or virtual production. These movies aren't getting simpler; they're getting more complex, and the demands for virtual, all the cinematics and the special effects are getting more and more complex as movies get more and more complex. And then the resolutions, we're going to 4K, we're going to 8K. So we're seeing huge demands from what they're asking for that's quickly evolving outside of, the standard type of kit into some of those more advanced technologies. Things like, NVIDIA RiverMax is a huge one where, studios are doing all those special effects on multi GPUs from multi different camera angles, and they need it all to be, perfectly in sync. There's a lot of that's being pushed by some of that heavier data center technology now, because it's just so much faster and so much better for enabling those workflows. So, a lot of it's that customer demand and that customer drive is they're like, hey, we want the Puget gear, but we need bigger Puget gear. We need faster Puget gear. So we're like, okay, let's do bigger and faster Puget gear. Nice.
That's so cool, man. This is very exciting stuff. Man, I feel a little bad now because I've touched on the bullet points that we discussed prior, and I suppose, is there anything more you would like to expand on? Anything that you're super excited about? Whether as you've been playing around in this space, I'm curious to know what are your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see how far technology is going to get pushed. I'd say one of the things that I find to be most interesting and most challenging is these products aren't getting cooler; they're getting hotter, and we're having to find new ways to cool these data center products or even our workstation products. Traditionally we've been an air cooling product. We make sure all of our workstations can be air cooled for reliability and performance. But we're getting to a point where the technologies are getting so compact, and the thermal requirements are getting so crazy that we're having to look at new technologies. I was at the supercomputing show in Denver last year, and it was wild to see that most all of the or a big portion of the products on the show floor wasn't just servers and GPUs. It was pumps and hoses and fittings and radiators and fluid.
Oh, wow.
It was a huge shift in that technology to cool the data center. And there was actually a presentation by the Open Compute Project where they were starting to strategize and plan for how they're going to deal with thermals around 3,000 watt GPUs in the data center. 3,000 watt GPUs in the data center. They were talking about the fact that we're hitting the thermal limits of silicon in our chip designs to the point where it's becoming an insulator, and we need to start looking at diamond substrate because of the thermal properties, because we're getting to a point where we have to get that heat away from the technology. So I'd say that's something I'm most excited and nervous about, is how that's going to expand to the fact that water and electronics typically doesn't mix until it has to.
Sure.
And I think we're getting to the point where it's probably going to have to.
Yeah. Well, and we say water, but it's not really water, right? There are better stuff out there than H2O to cool stuff. Like 3M's got some interesting goo.
It's cooling fluids and things like that. Yeah. It's kind of fun to poke fun at our owner for the mineral PC that he did all those years ago.
Yeah, and that's not hardly a joke anymore.
I know it's not. It's coming back, and it's immersion cooling in the data center is a thing. It's an actual product where you're taking servers and hanging them in vats of coolant, and then working on phase change, where you're pumping that coolant out and up to the roof and cooling it and bringing it back down. And that is becoming the next wave of data center technology. So it's fun to see that kind of come full circle.
Right. That's I've seen some crazy stuff where, like you said, like fully immersed, and like there's not even a heat sink or anything. You just see the stuff bubbling away on the just direct die almost. Just and that's crazy. 3,000 watt power supplies for I imagine that's for just one 3,000 watt GPU. I thought that was for the whole system. That's
just
insane.
One GPU. Yeah,
that's ridiculous. Oh man, that doesn't. I mean, as a consumer, that does not bode well for the future for my power bill. Like,
no, we're already not on your power bill.
That's like 10 4090s. That's crazy.
Wow. Now, obviously, we're talking really high end deployments in the data center.
Sure,
we're talking supercomputer level stuff, not your home use. But I know I would expect to see. I would expect to see the next generation of CPUs and GPUs to be pushing those thermal limits, as the technology advances. That's just it's an inevitability.
That's bonkers. So this might be a little outside of the scope here, but I remember years ago, as CPUs in particular, as we were getting the lithography tinier and tinier, they were having troubles almost. And this is probably very reductionist, but they were having troubles basically keeping the electrons on the traces. Like they were having problems with like it jumping traces and having all kinds of weird issues. Where can we go from there? Like the miniaturization can only go so small. So what is the next step?
That's very much outside of my knowledge or pay grade. But what I would think is, I know research is going a lot towards quantum computing.
Sure.
And I don't know enough to talk intelligently on the subject, but I know there's, they're pushing advancements in some of the big research institutes on what that next generation looks like. Sure. But that's on the molecular level. That's way over my head.
Yeah. Okay. Because it used to be that 5 gigahertz was like, they were never going to get any faster than that. There's just no way. We can't get it small enough. We can't push enough power. And now it's nothing to run a CPU at 6 gigahertz or plus. And it just seems that eventually, where does the physics stop almost, or like how it kind of breaks the mind a little bit to, or you start seeing a shift toward maybe ARM processors, like Apple has done, where they're making their own chips that are more ARM based, and how is that changing the landscape?
Yeah, I mean, and that's where we're building, or people are building products a little more specialized, right? As you look at like the ARM technologies and ASICs and things like that, those are technologies that are purpose built.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing that in the I'm drawing a blank on the specific chips for AI now that we're seeing put into laptops and phones.
Sure. Yeah, I was just starting to see that from Asus.
The specific processing units, and the first letter that's
NPUs, right?
NPU, yeah, the processing unit. We're seeing that where instead of building it one chip to do everything, we're finding better uses for different chips for different things. So we're starting to see a lot of that, and I think that's why there's Moore's law, which basically it was Intel's co-founder that basically said that the number of transistors in an integrated circuit will double every 2 years. And to this point, as far as I know, we have not broken that since he first made that statement. So we're still pushing the ability of the technology, but now we're just hitting those other challenges, right? Things like different technologies like AI, or how can we deal with the thermal properties that we have to get away from. But again, that's physics well beyond my my knowledge scope.
Well, it sounds like we're almost heading to a solution like way back in the day where you had a math coprocessor, right? Like you'd add an extra little chip so that you could do bigger, I think it was like for floating point operations and things like that. And I guess that seems to be the next thing. They're going to have an extra little doodad that goes on there to help with, like you said, like a specialized function. Like, okay, if I'm gonna do a lot of AI work, I'm gonna need my little AI coprocessor. Or if I'm gonna be doing a lot of 3D, gaming, right? 3D drawing, then I'm gonna need my special, well, I guess my big special graphics processor and things like that. We have a question from the YouTube just dropped in. Have you talked about storage solutions for small creators? No, we've been talking more big.
No, we can touch on that. We do have, depending on how small, we do have a product stack for, smaller level storage deployments that our consultants can talk about based on some of our QNAP technology. Our goal is to grow that as well, and find some of our software-defined storage that can move down into that space. But it's an interesting concept of small creator. It's not necessarily how big the creator is; it's how big your files are. So that would be the real question. Is small creators can make big things. So it really depends on what we're talking about when it comes to the total file size there. But we have products that can support it anywhere from kind of very very basic one person studios up to full scale enterprise deployments. We have solutions that cover the full gamut on that, and anyone on the consultant team can help kind of guide what might be the right product for that as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of lost the plot a little bit for a moment there. I'm curious to talk more about the future of this stuff, because not just for the company itself, but the industry at large. But I don't know enough to ask a good question. So I guess I kind of just open it up to you. Like, what do you see on the horizon for this?
Yeah, I mean, AI is going to be huge for the foreseeable future. We're seeing that really push some of the technology trends that we're seeing. So I'd say AI is going to be around to stay.
For sure.
I think things in the IoT range, the Internet of Things, we're going to see continued development and more devices and things that are internet capable. And I think we're gonna continue to see growth in a lot of those technology, AI, I think, is just going to be the big one. I say
Yeah.
that's going to be the future. I think systems will continue to grow. Storage is going to continue to grow. But it's more going to be on those I like to call them disruptive technologies, things that are going to come out and really change the landscape of how
Sure.
we do things. And you never know what's around the corner on that. I think AI is the big disruptive technology that we have right now, just like virtualization was, back in the day. AI is going to really change, I think, a lot of the way people interact and do business. I know I just picked up a new smartphone that's all AI enabled. It's the new Samsung that allows you to just circle a part of the image and it'll search based on that image and show you where you could buy it. And it's crazy how simple a piece of technology like that can be, but the back end development to get there is huge.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see that. And then there's all obviously going to be pitfalls with some of that technology. Is how is that technology going to be used for good or for bad, that we're going to have to be aware of. So there's areas there that we're definitely going to have to be vigilant on. Things like cybersecurity. As AI is going to be used for bad too. So we're going to have to definitely up our game when it comes to cybersecurity, to kind of combat some of that.
Yeah. It was years ago. I was talking with Don at one point, Don Kinghorn, our scientific advisor. He had mentioned that for decades we'd been gathering this data, right? I think we were talking about medical data at the time, but the problem had always been we didn't have the processing power to really do anything with it. And I feel like that's where we're kind of at with AI as well. AI is distasteful. It's because it's not intelligent, right? They're very specifically trained, like you were saying about the chips. Like they're good at the one thing that they're trained to do, and that's kind of about it. But now that we've gotten to this point, like with machine learning and neural nets and things like that now we have the power to actually do something really cool, really robust. And I feel like some of the hype is dying down on it. Like ChatGPT was like this crazy thing, at least on a general mainstream sort of
thing. And so when it comes to that, because you have things like ChatGPT or generative AI, that you can say, write me, create me a picture of Houston on ice skates eating a popsicle, whatever it is, you can just ask and it'll come up with it. So there's the generative AI side of it. But where I think we're going to see huge advancements is in those big data lakes and the analytics behind that, right?
Yeah.
Think of a good example I'd like to use when it comes to that is, let's say you're a law firm, right? And typically you have a paralegal that when you're researching a case, you're like, hey, I need you to go pull all this case law that's relevant to the case, and you have that paralegal that's going to go and do that. Well, if you could load all of that case law data into an AI model and ask it questions like ChatGPT and say, hey, I need an example of when, somebody committed this crime and, this was the precedents around it. And now you have that all in an AI model and you can pull that data out very quickly. So the data analytics side, I think, is going to be huge. I know internally here at Puget, there's a big AI push to be able to use some of that data, because we have been collecting data for years now. And being able to better utilize that data to help our customers is a huge push internally. So I think that's going to be a huge thing you're going to see is those types of pushes in that technology on how we can take and analyze that data and actually get something useful out of it.
I agree. I had a similar thought along the legal lines. I've in the distant past, I did some work for LexisNexis, which is one of the largest databases for law precedent and things like that. That's kind of their big thing. And I was thinking, man, if they're not working on some kind of LLM thing for that exact reason, it can't, because it's not just a Google search kind of thing. Like if it could actually infer, right? Inference is a big thing. Or like you said, man, I have this legal battle that I'm in. What relevant information can you provide to me? Man,
that just the legal side, just the legal stuff alone would be just tremendous.
Yeah.
Like super helpful for things.
And
But
then
even go
and
ahead.
then I was just going to say the medical side of it's another huge one. I remember reading an article, and don't quote me if I get some of this wrong, but I feel like there was somebody created and was using Vision AI because they had a bakery.
Oh yes, I know this story.
You know this one? So
Yep.
so they had a bakery, and they were having trouble with figuring out, which baked good a customer bought. So they developed some AI to say, okay, well, that's a bear claw, and that's a jelly donut, and that's that. And they could quickly ring it up and get customers out the door faster.
Yep.
And I think a researcher picked up on that, and he used that exact same code to look at medical images, and with a pretty good degree of accuracy, it was able to look at cancer cells. I think it was cancer cells, and pick it out using code that was originally used to look at jelly donuts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like,
so cool.
Yeah, it's
but that's what I mean, right? The core of that was trained the whole core of that is, here's a picture. What is this?
Yes.
That's the core training for that. And if you give it enough human verified data, right? You have to, because it's no good at just guessing on its own. It has to be confirmed first. Like, yes, that's what a jelly donut looks like. That's what a shrimp roll is. And so if you give it enough, and I'm sure there's millions and millions and millions of scans of what cancer does or does not look like, and you have at it, and oh cool, the pattern recognition I think is so strong with these models and stuff, that like that's definitely it. I get kind of jazzed up about the different applications for it. Have you ever read the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov?
Mm-mm.
There's a concept. It starts with the concept of this guy develops a mathematical model he calls psychohistory, that essentially kind of gives him the ability to predict the future, but only on a massive scale, right? There's like trillions of humans. We've spread out across the galaxy, and there's all this gobs of data, and it develops a model and be able to kind of predict the future in huge ways, right? And blah, 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 blah. I feel like this is kind of a start of that. Like, you have enough data and you train the model enough on statistics and what's happened in the past, you might get a bit of an idea of how things can go. Like, if we push this over here, or if these people make too much of this stuff, how is that going to change the price of rice in China or whatever, that kind of thing. And it's exciting and a little scary, but I'm very optimistic. I tend to try to lean toward the optimistic side of humanity. I think in a general sense, we are hopeful and bright creatures. And it's very exciting. It's just cool. We're in very exciting times, very interesting times, I think.
Yeah, I think I need to work on my AI model to predict the future. So in the next podcast, I can give you my exact prediction on what's going to happen in the world of technology.
Yeah, but it's just, I think we're on the cusp of some very cool things, and it's exciting to be even tangentially sort of involved with it, to see what's right in front of us almost, and then also what could be coming on the horizon.
Yeah, and that's probably my most favorite part, is to get to help our customers that have that vision or that idea make that a reality, and to be part of that. And we get to see so many different facets of it. Our customers that are doing movies, and we get to say, hey, we know that our customer helped on that movie, or our customer helped on that new autonomous vehicle that just came out, or that space telescope, we helped with the systems that are analyzing the data from that space telescope. That's one of the real fun parts about this, is to be part of that, even if it's just a small part of it, just to say, hey, we helped deliver that, and we helped provide something that got to that point. That's really cool.
Yeah, I like it. There have been a few customers that I've helped build machines for, or have connected with on social media, and it's really cool stuff. Yeah, but I mean, that brings us right up to about our hour. So I guess we'll just wrap it up here. Thanks, Chris, for joining us and giving some insight into the direction and future of Puget Systems and how we're going to help solve even bigger and better problems.
Sounds good. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Right. Yeah, thanks. And of course, as always, I appreciate the audience for showing up here. And I hope you guys this was informative and you had a good time. And we do this every month, first Tuesday of every month. Next month is actually AI. We're going to have Don Kinghorn, John A., Matt Bach will be joining me to discuss AI, machine learning, how that affects the commercial side, the consumer side, and just all that good stuff. So same time next month. I'm not sure the exact day, but it's first Tuesday, 12 p.m. Pacific. Set your calendar, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Thank you.